Hi everyone, I'm Sewstine. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to get started in machine embroidery. I want to emphasize that so much can be done on a simple one needle home embroidery machine like this one. I know I have a super fancy 10 needle embroidery machine now, but that's not how I started. This and most of this were all made on a machine that was the 2016 equivalent of the machine in front of me. So just a disclaimer, I am in fact a Baby Lock ambassador, and they are in fact loaning me this machine, which happens to be a Baby Lock Pathfinder. When I decided I was going to make this video, I emailed them and asked them to loan me this specific machine because it's closest to the machine I started out with 5 years ago. I picked this one because while it's still costly, it's certainly far from the most expensive one on the market. So if you were to ask me what machine to start out with, I would say something like this would be a great starting point. While I will go into more detail later in this video about how to select a machine, I want to show you how simple and intuitive a home machine is to use. First, you plug in the machine, you turn it on, you put in your embroidery files, and then you load it up. Put in your bobbin. Afterwards, you hoop your fabric with some stabilizer behind it. You put the hoop in place, thread your machine, thread your needle. Then you press start. Then you stay close by in case the machine needs you for anything, or if you decide to change the thread color. So to buy your machine, you'll want to go to your local embroidery store and just start playing with the different machines they have there. But what should you look for when you go into a store? These are the things I suggest you keep in mind. 1, buy a machine with an auto threader. This one is a no-brainer to me. Don't thread your own machines like an animal. It's so hard and so time-consuming and so painful. It's ridiculous. Once you see how many thread changes there are to most projects, you'll agree with me too. Look at this one. You literally press a button with a picture of a threading action going on, and then boom, it's threaded. That's it. There are others that make you do all sorts of tricks and stuff to get a machine threaded, but don't accept anything less than this, an easy threading. You deserve a machine that threads itself. 2, buy a machine with a thread cutter. So while you're embroidering, you're going to jump around all over the hoop from here to here to here to here. If you don't cut the threads in between, you'll get a thread in between it, what's called a jump stitch. A lot of modern machines now will cut most of these threads for you, so you don't have to do it at the end. This saves a ton of time and makes your embroidery just look a lot cleaner. 3, think about how the design gets placed in that particular machine and make sure you're happy with it. So when you're deciding how to put the design onto your fabric, you need to have a way to make sure that everything is exactly where it should be. While no one machine does it perfectly, you should at least have some way of knowing. For instance, my Baby Lock Venture does this by taking a picture of your hoop, and then you can literally move the image around on it on the computer screen and make sure you like it. Others use laser points at the center and at the different edges of the design to help you mark. Others use a mini projector to actually project the image onto the hoop. They're all different and they all have different price points. Just play around with the different machines at the store and make sure whichever machine you have is intuitive to you. 4, hoop size matters. Now for all of you thinking about buying an embroidery machine, it's best for you to start by thinking, what do you want to do with the embroidery machine? Do you want to make patches or appliques or monogram towels? All of which I also happen to do in my spare time. You don't necessarily need a machine that's all that fancy to do it. You can go to Amazon.com and you can often pick one up for a few $100s that has a hoop up to about 3x3, 5x5, or even 5x7 inches. But you're going to be limited in the size and scope of your embroidery. Now, if you're doing a full court suit or gown, you're going to want a machine that has a considerably larger hoop. The standard large hoop sizes are either 14 by 8 inches, although there is one now that is 16 by 10.5 inches, but wow, I don't even have that one yet. So generally speaking, 12 by 8 is about as large as the hoop gets before you get a distinct increase in price. For instance, I think going from a 10 by 6 to a 12 by 8 is only like a 30% jump, but then going from a 12 by 8 to a 14 by 8 hoop or a 16 by 11 inch hoop is like a 300% jump in price. So again, look at your budget, look at what you want to do. And again, you can always upgrade your machine later if it turns out that you love embroidery and you don't mind spending a lot of money on it. The next point, how do you get the files to your machine? Most do it via flash drives. This is the way that I recommend it because it's pretty fast and easy. Some require a computer to be actually connected to your embroidery machine. Next thing to think about is the machine still in production? If you want to look into the used market, which is a fantastic way to get started, in fact, my first 10 needle machine was in fact used, I would suggest buying a machine that even if it is used, still has parts available for it on the market. If you use your machine a lot, everything on it will break down at one point or another and you will have to replace it. So having an easy way to get parts is going to be such a lifesaver for you. So again, highly recommended. If you buy a used machine, make sure that there are still equivalent parts around that can be bought. And you can really look this up very easily online. So again, now that we have a list of things to think about when you go to the store, let's talk about actually buying the machine. But before we get there, I would like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, HelloFresh. I think I've made it very clear that I personally really enjoy saving time and reducing my carbon footprint wherever possible. One of the ways I do both at the same time is using a delivery service for my food. Especially on a week where I know I'm going to be working over 80 hours at the hospital, I make a point of signing up for HelloFresh so I don't have to worry about what we're going to be eating. So my husband and I have a deal. He does all the cleaning, I do all the cooking. And it works out really nicely because it turns out I hate cleaning. I just go online the week before and make sure that I have the meals that I want selected. They have a ton of different meals to choose from and have a ton of delicious vegetarian options as well. The meals are so delicious that even my 2-year-old will partake. Also, HelloFresh is dedicated to sustainability and their exterior packaging is completely recyclable, with most of the inside bits being recyclable as well. Not to mention, as I've said it before, meal kits have been shown to have a 25% decrease in carbon footprint on average compared to going to the grocery store due to a decrease in travel, packaging, food waste, and the way that their food is sourced versus grocery stores. If you'd like to try them out, I highly recommend them. Go to HelloFresh.com and use code Sewstine12 to get 12 free meals, including free shipping. So thank you HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Now that you know what to look for in a machine, let's go to an actual store. For me, my local store is Jackman Fabrics in Fairview Heights, Illinois. For your ease of use, I've made a Google Docs spreadsheet for you to print out and bring with you. Now, as I said, there are places to get your machine online, but I highly recommend going to a brick and mortar store. First off, it's just really wonderful to build up a relationship with your local store owners and support local and small businesses. If that doesn't convince you, you still need to get your machine serviced and repaired. Generally, you're supposed to get your machine looked at every 6 to 12 months. You may love that certain brand of machine, but if the closest store that is willing to service it is 3 hours away, I really don't suggest picking that brand. That being said, if you have your heart set on a machine and you want it, I would recommend asking your local store, even if they can service a different brand. A lot of places are very upfront about which machines they'll actually service, and they're very honest. So again, building up that relationship with your store is really important. When I wanted to upgrade my machine, they couldn't upgrade my machine for me since it was a different brand than the one they carried. However, the manager actually knew what I was looking for, which was a used 10 needle in a certain price range. And he kind of just kept an eye open for me. And the moment that a machine came in, he actually called me up and offered it to me first. And between him calling me and me running to the store and paying for it, 4 people tried to buy that machine, and he held it on for me because we had that relationship. So this seems like a good time for me to talk about how I actually got into machine embroidery. So I've wanted a machine embroidery for years because I love the idea of doing machine embroidery, but Obviously, I couldn't afford one when I was a resident, and I grew up really poor. So the thought of spending several $1,000s on a machine was completely mind-blowing to me. But I think what finally let me do it was graduating residency. For those of you who don't know, I am a full-time practicing board-certified medical doctor, and the only way you become a doctor in this country is to do 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school. The last 8 years, of course, requiring you to pay your way. After medical school, though, you become an intern for a year and then a resident physician, where you work in a hospital for minimal pay, but training under other physicians in the specialty of your choice. This period can last as little as 3 years to as long as 7 or more. Some people then specialize further to do fellowships, but I stopped after 1 year of internship and 3 years of residency, for a total of 4 years of training. Now, while I was a resident, I made some money, which is something better than paying money, but really, if you calculate how much I made per hour, assuming that I got time and a half, that is legally required in the state that I was practicing in for anything over 40 hours a week, I came to less than $8 an hour. This is, of course, assuming that I worked exactly 80 hours a week, which, of course, is the legal limit as of 2021, which, of course, I never broke that because, of course, why would I ever break that rule? Because why would they ever make me do that? You know, they would never do that. But on top of that, I was quite in debt from medical school. The average amount of debt from undergrad and medical school that the average medical student graduates with medical school with is $240,000 in the United States of America. And I will just say right now, I graduated with more than that because I went to NYU. In any case, regardless of the debt, I decided that the first paycheck I got as a full attending physician medical doctor was going to go to something special, something that I've wanted for years. And that was the embroidery machine for me. So I went to one of those events. They had an amazing deal on a machine, which to this day I'm like, wow, they actually really did give me a very good deal. And I got a machine and digitizing software with 0% financing with a down payment that from my first paycheck. And that is how I'll remember my first paycheck as a full-fledged doctor. Is my first paycheck went to an embroidery machine to start the hobby that I love so much. Anyways, I wanted to share that story with you guys. Now, once you're at your local store, don't be ashamed to ask all the questions. These are the questions I think you should at least think about. What are your financing options? Of course, unless you have several $1,000s just lying around. A lot of places offer 0% financing for 3 to 6 years. And you want to know, is it during events or is it all the time? How long does it take to get your machine serviced? How long will it take to get your machine? If you want to upgrade your machine, would they take it back? What used machines do they have? Do you have deals on machines plus digitizing software? Digitizing software is very important, but I will not discuss it today. Most stores do a lot of events where they offer significant discounts as well as financing options. Machines are generally cheaper at these events, and I would absolutely recommend asking about these events because it's also a really great way for you to try a machine out. Remember that while there is an MSRP, a lot of places will offer large discounts on top of that. You just have to ask when those prices are going to be around, and they're very frank. Once you order your machine, it'll come in a huge box like this one. So now that you have your machine, let's go through the embroidery process. First, plug in your machine, easy. Second, check the bobbin. You can wind your own bobbins on top, or if you're like me, you can buy pre-wound ones. I actually prefer the pre-wound option because it's both a time saver and saves on plastic, which is great in both counts. Pre-wound bobbins I get are wound on cardboard and come in a paper box versus the plastic spools for the ones I'd have to wind myself. So it seemed like both a time and plastic saver, so obviously that's what I was going to go with. Then I put the bobbin in. Please note that for this particular machine, I had to switch out the bobbin case for the normal plastic bobbin versus the pre-wound ones. And that's really easy to do. Step 3, load up your embroidery files. I do this by using a flash drive, connecting it to my computer, moving the files into the right folder, and then I put the flash drive into the machine, and you just click the button and they load right up. If the file is too large in size, it'll tell you, or sometimes you just have to turn the image in 90 degrees, which is not a big deal. Now, where to get the files? Well, I make my own, which is another video topic unto itself, so I really won't discuss it here. But there are some wonderful brands out there from fantastic digitizers. Just Google 18th century machine embroidery files, for instance, and you'll run into a ton. Your machine will also come with a bunch. It's all about what you're looking for. Step 4, thread your embroidery machine. Every machine is different, but usually you just follow the numbers and the arrows. If you're having trouble, your local store will absolutely spend time teaching you how to do it when you buy the machine. Step 5, thread your needle. Basically, after you thread your machine, simply press the button. Now, a side note about needles. There is a difference between a dedicated embroidery needle and universal needles. While a universal needle will embroider, a dedicated embroidery needle like the ones I have here are better. You'll notice the eye on the Schmetz needle is huge, far bigger than the universal. You want as big an eye for that needle as possible so that the thread can change direction as it embroiders without shearing on the side of the hole or pulling too hard. And if you have a universal, that's fine, but if you find that you're running into problems with the thread breaking or tension being too high, you may want to change needles. Step 6, set up your hoop. Get your hoop and your fabric and your stabilizer. Every fabric will need some sort of stabilizer in order to embroider. If you're doing a really complex design, I recommend a tearaway stabilizer that's really thick, like the Baby Lock brand, or another high quality one. If you're doing simple ones, you can often get away with whatever is cheapest on Amazon. I've linked a few of my favorite tearaways below. If, on the other hand, you're embroidering sheer fabrics like this cotton voile, you want something that will wash away so that there's nothing left, so that it really stays sheer, and this is what I did for my red dress. Here I used 2 layers of Baby Lock dissolvable stabilizer or 3 layers of H2O stabilizer. Please note that you can use multiple layers of stabilizer to help. You'll figure out what stabilizers work for you. These are the 4 stabilizers I use the most frequently in my own embroidery, but please keep in mind that there are thousands out there. There's floating ones, there's sew-in ones, there's cutaways, there's so many. For a project like my reticule, I put my fabric on top, the stabilizer layer below it, and then I hoop the fabric, pulling the edges of the fabric till it's nice and taut. I highly recommend that the fabric be super tight like a drum, but you'll figure out what works best for your personal machine. I use a screwdriver tool I got at my local store to tighten the hoop as much as I can comfortably. I've also linked it below. I then slide the hoop into my machine, making sure that the edges of all the fabric are not underneath the hoop at any point in time so you don't accidentally sew through both layers. Step 7, start embroidering. To do this, bring down the embroidery foot by pressing the button and then press start. Some machines will not have a foot button, but there is another one, so please keep that in mind. So for the first 3 or 4 minutes of embroidery, I stay really close to the machine, like directly next to it while it embroiders, so that if it runs into a problem, I'll know right away and can stop it. Take a look at the tension and make sure that everything is okay. If you're seeing that the white bobbin is showing on the top layer, it means that the tension of the bobbin is too low or the tension of the top thread is too high. Remember that the machine embroidery is a symphony of tension. The tension of the lower thread must be higher than that of the top thread. You can adjust the tension on your bobbin by changing up the screw in your bobbin case or some other way on your own personal machine, or you can decrease the tension of your top thread by pressing the button for tension. The other thing I highly recommend is that when you initially start, decrease the speed on your machine to the lowest possible setting. Lower speed equals lower tension. Once you get more used to your machine, you can start by going up on the speed, but when you first start, it's much better to just start with a lower tension. Do everything you can to decrease the tension on your top thread is my honest suggestion. And that's it. Now you're ready to embroider. Here I'm doing a practice stitch out of my Art Nouveau lace pattern onto some cotton muslin I had left over from my Anna skirt mock-up. I'm liking the way it looks, so I let it continue. So this is a beginner's guide. I didn't go into a lot of things, and there's a lot of different things, but hopefully this is enough to get you started. I didn't talk about digitizing embroidery, and I did not talk about how to do multi-hoop projects. I do have videos on those as well, which I've linked below. If this is helpful or if this has inspired you to buy a machine, I'd love to hear about it. If you have questions, please jot it below and I'd love to help, even if it's a different brand. I don't know that much about other brands, so I will absolutely tell you if I don't know. Thanks so much for watching. Next week, I'll be returning to more of my normal content with some sewing adventures. If you like this video, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more wholesome embroidery content.